I have a proposal for how they should fix the NBA draft to eliminate the tanking problem, but still support competitive balance. So let me run this by you guys and for the listeners. Okay, so the idea is just very simple, the core idea. Basically, have completely flat odds for every team in the lottery and all picks 1 to 14. So, like, pick out of the hat style. Why do this? This will completely eliminate the utility of losing games to get a better draft pick for any of the non-playoff teams. So, there'll be no, like, at worst case, even if we lose the lottery, we'll still get fifth pick if we're the worst team in the league. No, you every pick, every single pick 1 to 14 would be a pick out of the hat lottery style. It would also help teams that are sort of right on the cusp of the playoffs but didn't make it, like the Hornets or like some perpetual teams like the Chicago that are trying, and kind of that middle of the pack teams that you hear about is like the worst place to be in the NBA, right? That'll go away because those teams will have just as good a chance of getting the first pick as the worst team. But it'll still keep some competitive balance if you made the playoffs and you have a really good team. We want. I like really parity in the league. I think that's something that NFL does really well, and to me, that's more interesting for every team to feel like they have a chance, for teams to be able to get out of the gutter. And so, I don't want any of these kind of proposals where it's like, oh, if you're the worst teams, you don't get a top pick, or oh, these, the best team in the league, it'll go in a cycle or something. To me, I still want that core idea of, if you didn't make the playoffs, you have a chance to get a player that can change things. With this completely flat odds system, should eliminate tanking, but still give these teams a chance. However, the league, there is a problem with this. The league's tried this before. Okay, from about 1984 to 1992, the league had the system, and it came to the end when the Orlando Magic won the lottery 2 years in a row. Their first pick was Shaq, and the next year they didn't quite make the playoffs. I think they were the best team that didn't make the playoffs, and they won again, and they picked Penny Hardaway out of that.
I,
So
I
they
think
cut.
it might have been the
They picked Chris Webber was the first pick, but they
yeah
traded to
with
get
traded with Golden State. Yeah,
Penny Hardaway. Yeah, and so people really didn't like that, right? They didn't like that a team won 2 years in a row. And so to sort of mitigate this, I want to add something to the draft proposal that might be a bit controversial. And this is the part I want to talk through with you guys. Basically, the idea is that if a team wins first place in the lottery, they will not be able to pick it first again for the next 2 years. So their name will effectively be taken out of the hat when the first pick is made in the following 2 years. So this will mean that a team can only win the top draft pick once every 3 years at best. And this rule would apply to any and all draft picks that the team owns. You can't just, trade with one team, trade back or something to get out of it. If you own 5 draft picks, none of them would be in the hat, just to kind of completely eliminate this possibility. So, just to kind of explain this a little bit more. So, let's say this rule was in place for this year's draft, then the Dallas Mavericks, who won Cooper Flag last year, and the Atlanta Hawks, who won Zachary Ricochet, neither of them would be able to get that top pick. The Hawks obviously aren't in the lottery. I don't think they have a lottery pick, but I just
they have New
assuming that
Orleans
they
lottery
were.
pick, but yeah, their own is not.
Oh, you're right. They do have New Orleans lottery pick. So, but they wouldn't be able to be because they won 2 years ago, even with New Orleans lottery pick. So this is a good example of that rule. And so, this might, however, introduce some weird things with trades, and teams lottery picks then will be like the Mavericks and the Hawks lottery picks would be less valuable, right, than everybody else's lottery pick because they are mitigated in this way. And so maybe they would try to trade with the team, and those guys give them a little promise or something like, hey, we'll give it back to you, just give us $1 million or whatever. And so to kind of mitigate that, there'd be another rule that basically teams will not be allowed to trade the draft pick or the player drafted with said draft pick back to the original team that owned it within 1 year. So that's hoping to mitigate it. And then just to kind of complete the whole set of rules, I think there's also an issue where teams, get multiple top three picks. And so I think I wanted to also just kind of eliminate the random chance possibility of a team getting, three top three picks in a 3 year span. And so there'd be another rule that this is basically works exactly like that mitigation for the first pick. However, now it's if a team wins two top three picks in a 2 year span, like in subsequent years or as part of the same year, they will not be in a drawing for the top three pick the next year. So this one's a little more complicated to think about, but it's sort of the same rule as like I said, as the mitigation for the top one pick. This is open to suggestions like maybe it should be top five or maybe it should be for 5 years or something like that. But the idea is that the same rules would apply now.